Hello, good morning and welcome to Business. My name is Blyden Okem. On Business 360, some of the key features to look forward to is that IMF have revised Asia's 2025 GDP growth higher to 4.5%, and we'll begin from there. The National Monetary Fund revised its economic growth forecast upward on Thursday to 4.5% in 2025, an increase of 0.6 percentage point from its estimate in April. And though slowing from 4.6% last year, it projects growth to slow to 4.1% in 2026. Economic activity in the Asia-Pacific region was holding up better than expected in April. Despite the area bearing the brunt of U.S. tariffs, said Krishna Srivana, director of the IMF Asia and Pacific Department, at a news conference as reported. But it cautioned that significant downside and the downside risks remain, noting that the dust on tariff has not settled yet, could still increase. The agency warned that renewed escalation in U.S.-China tensions could deal a heavy blow to a region deeply integrated into global supply chains. It's once again said to contribute about 60% both this year and in 2026. As you're on the whole scene, assume you may be able to display your oldest iPhone alongside a coin showing the man whose company invented the device. The United States Mint has some 4 designs for the 2026 American Innovation $1 coin program. You know what Apple design, a young Jobs wears a turtleneck and sits cross-legged in front of Northern California landscape of rolling hills and oak trees. The Jobs coin is part of a series dating back to 2018. These coins are unlikely to be in regular circulation and even less likely to be available at your bank for $1. They are legal tender, but also collectibles. Previous American Innovation commemorative dollar coins have been sold by the Mint for $13.25 or more in a special display booklets. In Africa, Africa's gold refining industry is entering a transformative phase as nations race to capture more value from the mineral wealth with the launching of more refineries. New and expanded refineries in countries like Ghana, Uganda, and Mali illustrate the transformative push. Challenges such as illegal mining and geopolitical influences highlight complex tensions within this growing industry. The lack of globally accredited facilities underscores the necessity for higher standards and international accessibility. Still in Africa, China's BYD, the world's largest maker of new energy vehicles (NEVs), is preparing to electrify South Africa and potentially the rest of Africa with an ambitious rollout of charging infrastructure. BYD, the world's largest NEV maker, will establish 200 to 300 charging stations in South Africa by 2026, expanding its electric vehicle infrastructure across the nation. The company has recently launched several models in South Africa, including the Dolphin Surf, aimed at mass market adoption of electric cars. Despite no immediate plans for local vehicle manufacturing, BYD is investing heavily in the country's EV charging network, positioning itself as a major player in Africa's electric vehicle future. BYD will face competition from global and local brands in South Africa, including Volvo, Mercedes, BMW, and Tata Motors, as the local electric vehicle market continues to grow. Still in South Africa, Vodacom, one of Africa's leading telecommunications operators, is investing over 500 million rand, an equivalent of $29 million in South Africa's the network infrastructure for the 2026 financial year, focusing on expanding radio and transmission capabilities. The investment includes deploying advanced 4G and 5G technologies to urban and rural areas, adding over 250 new 5G sites. Vodacom enhanced infrastructure has led to a 48% increase in download speeds and greater access to digital services. The initiative also supports SMEs, reducing data costs and fostering local economic growth and employment opportunities. And now to Ghana. Ghana has consistently touted its intention to regulate the use of cryptocurrency within its borders. Johnson Asiama, the governor of the Central Bank of Ghana, at the sidelines of the International Monetary Fund's meeting in Washington on Thursday, disclosed that a law to regulate cryptocurrencies and virtual assets would be put in place by the end of December. The regulatory framework includes the Virtual Asset Provider Acts, empowering oversight of virtual asset platforms. This initiative intends to balance consumer protection with encouraging financial innovation. Ghana joins other African countries like South Africa and Nigeria in establishing cryptocurrency guidelines. And now we'll go on a quick break, and when we're back, the conversation continues looking at identities within the context of Nigeria and, most importantly, talking about the Dangote refinery as it slashes a crude intake. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It is Business 360 and my name is Blyden Ukem. And now from the context of Nigeria, a Dangote refinery slashes crude intake. Amid its recent struggle to meet local fuel demand, the Dangote Petroleum Refinery has reportedly reduced its crude oil purchases this month, following operational setback that have slowed output. The refinery is expected to purchase fewer than 300,000 barrels a day of crude this month, according to tanker tracking data and cargo allocation lists. Reports hinted that the development could linger into next year, potentially tightening supply and sustaining the upward pressure on petrol prices across the country. The amount, which includes local supplies and imports, is down more than 50% from a peak crude purchase of 600,000 barrels per day in July, and is less than half the plant's capacity. The report noted that the volume of crude purchased by the refinery is crucial to the market, as it plays a significant role in determining the nation's petrol supply. Dangote's gasoline unit has had several stoppages this year, and it could have to shut down again early next year to complete major work, according to intelligence firm IRR Energy. Analysts including consultant FGE and Nexat ECA are therefore skeptical that the refinery can operate at a high rate going into 2026. Still in Nigeria, the International Monetary Fund has said that deceleration in inflation in Nigeria is being driven by the policy tightening undertaken in recent years, particularly on the monetary policy front, and the effects of exchange rate reforms. This was disclosed by the director of the African Department at the IMF, Abebe Selassie, at a press conference on the IMF October Regional Economic Outlook for Sub-Saharan Africa on the sidelines of the IMF World Bank meetings in Washington, D.C. The National Bureau of Statistics on Wednesday, in its latest Consumer Price Index, disclosed that Nigeria's headline inflation rate eased to 18.02% in September compared to 20.12% in August 2025. This is the first time in 3 years that inflation has fallen below the 20% threshold. still in Nigeria. The federal government and Google on Thursday conducted training for Nigerian civil servants in a bid to harness $1.75 trillion in annual public sector productivity gains from artificial intelligence AI by 2033. In a speech at the event in Abuja, the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, emphasized the critical role of AI skills in the actualization of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government's $1 trillion economy target by 2030. He explained the Nigerian government's commitment to the capacity among civil servants to ensure that AI skills play a critical role in every part of the Nigerian economy, including the education, agriculture, healthcare and governance sectors. We see artificial intelligence as a major driver of productivity across our key sectors, he said. Meanwhile, Senator J. Kalu has expressed reservation about safety concerns in the Nigerian aviation industry, accusing some pilots in the country of taking illicit drugs. Kalu, a former governor of Abia State, blamed the development on regulatory agencies, particularly the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, stressing that they have failed in their responsibility to properly monitor pilots and ensure safe flight operations. He stated that the authorities' laxity in their oversight duties poses a threat to passengers' safety nationwide. Speaking on the floor of the Senate on Wednesday, Kalu criticized the lack of rigorous checks within the aviation sector. And now we'll go on a quick break, another break. And when we're back, the conversation continues, now looking at global economic standings around the world and the markets. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It's still Business 360. My name is Blyden Ukem. And now to global economic standings around the world and the market. First, from South Korea's jobless rate ages lower in September. South Korea's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate aged down to 2.5% in September 2025 from 2.6% in August, returning to July's level. The country added 312,000 jobs, marking the strongest employment gain in 19 months and bringing the total number of employed people to 29.15 million. Still, hiring in manufacturing and construction continued to decline, reflecting ongoing weakness in core sectors. The latest figures extended a steady recovery in employment following a brief setback last December when 52,000 jobs were lost. A job creation gathered pace afterwards, reaching a peak of 245,000 in May before easing to 183,000 in June, 171,000 in July, and 166,000 in August. And now to the markets as oil hits for third straight weekly loss. WTI crude oil futures hovered around a 5-month low of $57 per barrel today, on track for a third consecutive weekly drop, the longest streak since March, as investors focus on the supply outlook ahead of U.S.-Russia talks. President Trump announced plans to meet Russian President Putin in the coming weeks to discuss a possible resolution to the war in Ukraine, fueling speculation that positive outcomes could ease restriction on Russian oil output, potentially adding to the global surplus. And now to the market. Let's talk about the energy market first, and afterwards we'll talk about the metals and other commodities. The energy markets. Energy market indicates the price of crude oil, U.S. crude, at $56 US dollars per barrel, and we're talking about a price falling by 0.528 point compared to yesterday's price, and a 0.92% decline. Brent, which represents Nigeria's price benchmark, a price level stands at $60 US dollars per barrel, dropping 0.552 and negative 0.9%. Natural gas and the negative, gasoline and the negative, heating oil dropping, and coal price dropping. To the metals, as gold poised for its strongest week in 5 years. A gold climbed to around $4,360 per ounce today, climbing back towards the fresh record it set earlier and on track for a sharp weekly advance, the strongest since March 2020, as investors sought safe havens or a safety amid heightened economic uncertainties. The bullion repeatedly hits new highs this week, driven by renewed U.S.-China trade tensions and concerns over the ongoing U.S. government shutdown. The latest trade development saw China accuse the U.S. of stirring panic over its rare earth mineral controls, while U.S. officials warned such measures threaten global supply chains. The non-yielding metal was further supported by expectations of U.S. rate cuts after Fed Chair Powell's recent remark pointed to signs of weakening labor market, leading investors to nearly fully priced in a 25 basis point cut this month, with another likely in December. Gold has now surged more than 60% so far this year, boosted by central bank purchases. And now let's go to the market, the metal market then, and see the price of gold and other metal commodities, the metal market. A gold price currently this morning stands at $4,341 per ounce, gaining 0.31% appreciation. Silver dropping a negative 0.51%, and copper at $4.86 per pound, downward a negative 1.54%. Steel price falling by 21 point negative 0.69% at 3,022 Chinese yuan per ton, the price of steel. And now to agricultural commodities as cocoa futures edge up, still near 20-month high. Cocoa is traded on the New York Merchandise Exchange and the Intercontinental Exchange ICE in London. The prices in New York are based on the South Asian market, and prices in London are based on cocoa from Africa. The size of each cocoa contract on the New York Exchange is 10 metric tons. The biggest producers of cocoa are Ivory Coast and Ghana, which together account for more than 60% of the world's output. Other major producers include Indonesia, Nigeria, Cameroon, Ecuador, and Brazil. Although cocoa is one of the world's smallest soft commodity market, it has global implication in food and candy producers and the retail industry. Cocoa prices displayed on trading indicates a different outlook. Well, first let's go to the market then, the agricultural market, and see what the price of cocoa is. Agricultural markets. Beginning with the price of some agricultural commodities, talking about the price of soybeans, a price level stands at $1,013 per bushel, gaining 3.17 point, 0.31%. Wheat price at $503 per bushel, upward by 0.8 point, 0.16%. Lumber gaining but not significant. The price of palm oil is at 4,512 Malaysian ringgit per ton, downward by 6 point, a negative 0.13%. Well, before we get too close, let's look at equity market. As Asian equity market mostly fell today, tracking Wall Street lower after two U.S. banks disclosed bad loans, stoking fears of wider credit market risks. Concerns about heightened U.S.-China trade tension, the prolonged U.S. government shutdown, and fears of an AI bubble also kept sentiment fragile. Shares in Australia, Japan, China, and Hong Kong were lower. Let's conclude with the African stock market this morning. African stock market. Perspective from the African stock market begins with the Nigerian stock market at 148,355 index points, gaining 613 basis points this morning, a 0.41% appreciation, while South African stocks SA All and SA 40 both downward, and 1,759 points decrease, as well as 1,762 basis point drop for both South African stock market respectively. EGX 30 and Egyptian stock market at 37,677 index point, gaining 23 basis point, and stock market in Kenya talking about Nairobi 20 and Nairobi All Share all gaining but lowly margin, but the index point of the gain, percentage point of the gain, is at 1.15% and 2.41% respectively for the Kenyan stocks. Well, it's a multiplicity of conversation around the world of business, and here we draw the curtain in today's edition of Business 360. Thank you for being a part of it. My name is Blyden Ukem, and thank you for watching.